People can say Trump's going to be a good thing, but I think Trump's going to, ratchet up some of the, he talks about trade wars and stuff with China. You see companies like Kaspersky Labs now recently, wanting to get, they have to get out of the U.S. They're Russian. You see Chinese companies getting out. What's happening?
We're going to have Nomad Capitalist on today, who is Andrew Henderson. You guys have probably seen him. Andrew, good to have you on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Most of our audience, about 45% or so, are US based. And then we have another 160 countries that follow this channel around the world, obviously crypto centric. That really has kind of set up, I think, into a very unique position because of what we've seen with Mika. We'll talk about that in the EU, but also we're starting to see the Pacific Rim become a lot more receptive of what's been happening in Web3, crypto, and of course, blockchain technologies going forward. With that being the case, and if the U.S. does lose its pole position in terms of kind of the next generation of technology, many people would look at Silicon Valley as kind of the reason that the U.S. rose to power, and I would agree with that. But if you look at the next generation, whether that's AI, obviously chips, as well as the software that might be offshoring, and then of course blockchain going offshore. When you look at that and you see the different areas and regions of the globe, what have you seen that has been more technologically savvy that could fit into at least the blockchain side of things? Is it mostly in the Pacific Rim, or are you seeing things like in Dubai, et cetera?
Well, it's all over. I mean, for years now, the country of Georgia, which I talked about a long time ago, I mean, they decided to put a lot of their public records on the blockchain, and so they've embraced technologies. I think what you're seeing, there's a couple trends. Smaller countries in a more competitive world want to gain an edge. And so if you're into crypto or Web3 or AI, there may be a country that's specifically of interest to you that might not be of interest as much to someone who runs a consulting business, for example, because what you're going to see is, and imagine this, countries competing for your business. There are a number of countries that have tax incentives, hiring incentives, grants, from Chile, a dozen years ago, to Armenia today, and many others, to bring your tech company there. They've got special regimes for tech companies. They want those people to come. I can't bring my business, a consulting business, there and reduce my taxes to single digits, but a tech business could. And so, it's kind of like, the dollar is the world reserve currency. People say, oh, it's never going to fall off its pedestal. What would replace it? Well, that's exactly the point. Nothing is going to replace it. It's just going to slowly lose share as, the yen added 2 percentage points in the last couple of years, the euro, everybody's adding a couple of percentage points. And I think that's what countries are looking at in a space like this. Hey, if we could add a niche field in Bermuda or Malta or Georgia, catered to crypto and Bitcoin miners with cheap electricity, for example. If we can just get this one field and be known for that, that's all we need. I just interviewed a guy, he renounced U.S. citizenship like 30 years ago. He moved to Anguilla in the Caribbean. They got 14,000 people. And he says by the end of this year, half of the entire island's budget is going to come from .ai domains. I mean, if you got $6 million a month in the United States, that would pay the debt off for about a millisecond. But it pays off, it pays half the expenses of this island. And so you can do things a lot more innovative. And so I think when you look at, the US, and I think, people can say Trump's going to be a good thing, but I think Trump's going to, ratchet up some of the, he talks about trade wars and stuff with China. You see companies like Kaspersky Labs now recently, wanting to get, they have to get out of the US. They're Russian. You see Chinese companies getting out. What's happening? More, quote unquote, enemy countries for Westerners are developing their own stuff. They're going to make their own chips. They're going to do their own thing. And I think that's just going to keep contributing to multipolarity, more competition around the world that never existed 25 years ago when I was a kid. There weren't that many options, and now there are. I think you're looking for smaller countries that are pro-free market, and that want to attract this particular niche.
Well, I think, when you look at Trump's position, obviously we've seen, so pretty big deals happening here over the last couple of weeks with Trump also pivoting his position on blockchain, because he's been one that was somewhat anti-blockchain. And I think once Vivek Ramaswamy was able to kind of get in his ear, teach him a little bit of what is happening. I think
he said it was a scam in 2019.
He did, Very, very anti-crypto. And education sometimes I think will open, true innovators' minds.
Sure.
Now, whether Trump is a true innovator or not, the fact is he sees there's an opportunity here for the United States to maybe get a pole position in technology again. Now, is it too late is the real question. What we've seen happening not only in Japan, I'll talk about that in a second, also in Hong Kong. Then you look at Singapore as being a hub now for a lot of blockchain development companies, including Cambodia. And then you look at Dubai, which is kind of the haven for millionaires that have kind of already made it and are looking to kind of grow their consulting business. Do you think that Trump could come in, get in a position, even if he does do a hard line in terms of import-export, but at least get back into putting the U.S. in an innovation stance in terms of growth? Do you think that is a possibility?
By the way, I think that the consulting business owner should look at other options in Dubai. I mean, we've got about 32 tax-friendly countries. Dubai now has, and the UAE now has, a 9% tax for almost all businesses. So if you're choosing somewhere to move and there's a place that's 0, 1, 2, or 5% that maybe you can get a passport from while you're living there, that should be considered. I mean, don't just look at, hey, I'm paying 40 now, I can go to 9. That's pretty good. Well, if you could go from 40 to 3, plus you get a passport 5 years from now and you get that extra perk, that's worth considering. But to your point on Trump, I'm an entrepreneur first and an investor second. I think just that's how I'm wired. And so I've said, for example, I'm not going to buy NVIDIA stock. I do have, a tech, fund, a tech ETF, and NVIDIA's in there. But I spend my time running my business. That's my growth stock. And for me to pay attention to all the machinations of what's happening in AI, and is there someone who's going to overtake NVIDIA, and always paying attention to that. If you're a full-time investor, that's one thing. But for the rest of us, I just can't do that. And I look at countries the same way. Trump gets in for 4 years. Does that mean that the culture of the United States has changed? I don't think it does. I think it means that people flip like the wind. I think it means that people in the US and other Western countries are harder hit than ever. I just saw it takes you to the middle of July living in London just to pay your rent. So people are hurting. And this is what I talked about with my father when I was 12, 13, 14 years old. I don't think people have changed the culture of give us free stuff, regulate the rich guys, take from them. I think that's generally where the Western world is going increasingly. And I see that. I think that people, number one, Joe Biden, probably the worst political candidate, in the history of planet Earth or planet Zutron. So there's that. And I think people are just saying, let's shake things up. I don't think that's an endorsement from the average person for crypto or Web3 or AI. And if some other demagogue comes in and says, hey, these people, look at these crypto bros, look at them in Dubai. They're with the Ukrainian girls with their US passport. They're not paying us everything. You think the average American or Brit or Australian's not going to say, yeah, that's offensive. I'm paying, I can barely pay my rent. Yeah, go after that guy. I think, citizenship-based taxation in the U.S. is already a thing. I think more Western countries will bring it in. So sure, maybe it gets better for 4 years. But I'll tell you, we have a company in another Western country, Ireland. We have some staff there. And I saw the tax return they had to file for that company and the work they had to do to manage that company. It is night and day difference than the U.S., where you're pooping your pants practically, worrying that you don't put the wrong number in the wrong place by accident and they come and get you. It's only the United States where I see, like, I go on CoinDesk, and every day someone's being sued by the U.S. or someone's being thrown in prison. I'm sure some of them deserve it, and I'm sure some of them were just like running an honest business like entrepreneurs do. And I just don't know that one guy gets in power. I mean, I think with anything, you've got to, the United States is not a country that turns on a dime. It's an aircraft carrier, not a pontoon boat. And I don't know how one guy in 4 years changes the fabric of the country.